welcome to MS Learn Online. I'm Kate Milliken, your host for the third installment of our special three-part series on healthy living with MS, featuring multi-platinum country music star Clay Walker. Yeah! In the first two programs, we talked about maintaining our physical and emotional health while living with MS. Now we're going to talk about putting it all together and really living with MS. Those of us with MS know at times just dealing with the disease can be a handful. So how do we fit all the stuff associated with MS into our daily lives? That's what we're going to talk about today. I'd like to start this segment out with a quote from Richard Cohen, an accomplished journalist with secondary progressive MS. He says, quote, "With any progressive disease like MS, the moment is going to come where you feel overtaken by it. For me, it was time to stop running from it and start running with it. I just reached a point where I had to admit it was part of me and part of who I am." So Clay, in my MS experience, I have found that there are moments where I have actually needed to ask for help. And I'm curious to find out how you are at asking for help and whether you've had to do that as well.
You know, I've been fortunate enough to have a really great doctor who, relieving the anxiety of MS. The more you learn about it, the less afraid of it that you are. So, I have to say that my doctor has been my support system as far as relieving my anxiety. My family, my wife Jessica, is my biggest support. Once I started running with it, as the quote that Richard Cohen said, I think I've never looked back.
So there are times that people don't ask for help because they may not want somebody to know that they have MS. So Dr. Cobb, in your mind, when do you think it's best to tell family and friends that you have MS?
I think it's important to start letting the people close to you know pretty soon, because the people who know you and love you can tell that something's going on even if you don't talk about it. And their imaginations will fill in the gaps. So I think for those who live with you and are involved very much in your daily life, you want to start to tell them pretty quickly. Once you're talking about people outside your very close circle, you have to think about how you want to convey information about yourself, how much you want to convey, and you really want to be prepared to deal with different people's responses. One of the tricks is that once that information's out there, you can't take it back. So I really encourage people to think carefully about why they want another person to know, how much they want them to know, and how they're going to teach them about MS.
Clay, for you, what made you decide to go public?
Oh, wow. Probably because of what Dr. Cobb just said, is the fact that I didn't want something to become evident if I ever reached a stage where it was physically evident that I had MS, and then someone think that it was something else, and start filling in the blanks, as the doctor said. And I wanted to learn. So every concert I do, it seems like someone who comes through what we call our meet and greet line asks me, "Clay, what are you doing for MS? When did it affect you?" All these questions. I'm like, why don't we just have a website that answers these specific questions about what is Clay doing? And it's a lot of the stuff that the folks here are doing. And I decided to make our foundation all about MS. And we wanted to answer those questions. So that's why we started Band Against MS. And I would say that it has helped a lot of people. And there's a lot of heroes out there that are dealing with this disease. And we want to also acknowledge those people. So we do that on our website.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to the studio audience for Joe.
Hi. My MS affects my cognitive abilities. I know it affects a lot of people's cognitive abilities, and I wondered if it affects yours. And if so, have you ever forgotten the words to your songs because of it?
I don't forget words on stage. But sometimes I'll be trying to process a sentence or something, I won't be able to think of the word I'm trying to say. But I think that you can't, we're so afraid sometimes of MS that a natural, or should I say a normal mistake made like that, we want to say, oh gosh, is MS kicking in?
I'd love to ask Dr. Cobb a follow-up to that in light of your thoughts about tips for cognitive function and helping out.
I think that the most important thing about cognitive function is to think about the ways you're functioning in your everyday life. If you're noticing significant changes, and I don't mean the kinds of things that happen to every one of us. Sometimes we can't remember something or we can't come up with a word, but if you feel like your abilities at work or your abilities to function at home are changing, it's important to get some help to figure out what the problem might be. And the reason that I emphasize this is that we know that cognitive changes are, along with fatigue, the main reason that people leave the workforce early with MS. So the best advice is that if you're picking up changes in your own functioning, you want to notice it and take care of it before your boss does.
Do you think, Dr. Cobb, that stress or emotional pain has a great effect on our physical and thinking ability?
Sure. I don't think any of us function as well, with or without MS, if we're deeply stressed or we're in great emotional pain. But I don't think that those are, by themselves, causes of the kinds of physical symptoms or cognitive changes that we can see in MS.
Eric in the studio audience.
I have a bit of a professional question for you. How does MS affect your relationship with your agents and talent managers and so forth? Example, I guess, do they take that into account when planning your, tour?
You know, I think everybody that was around me had to take a step backwards and go, whoa. I mean, think about this. Think about the calls that your family made. Something just went through my mind. Imagine that. I thought, I wonder what calls privately that were talked about that I never heard about. Managers, agents, I'm sure, because there's a lot of people who depend on the income that they make off of me. And we're a team, but there's a lot of people depending on me, so therefore I have a double duty of responsibility to take care of myself, because band members that have been with me since I started, their entire families, their financial lives, managers, agents, all these people.
Clay, did you feel like in the beginning when your agent, your manager heard about it and they didn't know what was going to happen, that there were some steps that they took?
They did, yeah. Well, not steps that they took. I think that questions they wanted to know, they were like, what is it? I heard Dr. Cobb talking about this, about people leaving the workforce and doing this, and I understand it. I really do. I see people like this all the time. I'm like, you know what? Only the truth will set you free. Only the truth will show. And you know what? When I get on stage and they see me, no one's going, I feel sorry for him. He has MS. If I was debilitated by this disease tomorrow, I promise you that I'd look at my life and go, I've done everything that I can do for this MS. So that's what you have to gauge your own self by. And you have to ask yourself at night when you get in bed, have I done everything? I'm going to challenge you guys. Have you done everything? And it's not have you thought about everything? That's not fair. That's half the battle. Have you thought about everything? Yeah, we've all thought about everything, but have you done everything?
Next question for you, Dr. Cobb. Unfortunately, we all know that MS can progress to a different place where people start needing more assistance and having to change the pattern of their life. What has been the reaction that you have gotten from people who are trying to accommodate accessories and things to help them in light of that?
I think that everybody's reaction is very individual, but to generalize a little bit, I think there are people who feel that asking for help or using a mobility aid or another device to help them is somehow giving in to MS. And so they struggle really hard to avoid that, thinking that the longer they avoid it, the more they're putting MS off. And then I think there are other people who approach MS as a problem to be solved, a series of challenges to meet. And they look around for every single tool, every single resource that they can find to make the job easier. Just like if they were going to build a house, they would do it with a tool chest full of all the things that they need. So rather than seeing using tools or devices as giving in to MS, they really see it as taking charge of MS. And I think that's when those tools and resources and mobility aids can be fabulous, because they can make it possible for people to do the things that they enjoy, that they find satisfying, that give their lives meaning.
You know what the biggest tool is? This.
What, the smile? Yeah.
If people get happy, even if you got to fake it a little bit, I'm telling you, that tool right there, that one will carry you a long way. Because what is it about MS? MS makes us isolated. It makes us feel less than equal to the person that you're standing in front of or talking to. You know what people are attracted to? Happiness. If you be happy and you find happiness, people will swarm you. You know what? There's something about that energy that comes from other people that can also be very healing and very gratifying. There's nothing debilitating about MS as far as your happiness.
And speaking of energy, email question from Mary. Clay, I've seen you numerous times in concert.
Stalker.
Oh, get in line.
Hey, walker stalkers.
The thing that intrigues me the most is how you manage to put so much into each performance. How do you manage to put so much energy into a show?
I'm so happy to be there. MS made me grateful. Before I walk on stage, I say thank you that I have this ability and this talent. And I go out there and I dance like it's going to be the last time I ever get to do it.
Wow. Yeah. So I'm sure most of this audience knows that you have a new baby in the house.
Don't know how that happened.
So how has parenting affected your MS symptoms?
You know, that's the thing about MS is that you have to have it. It can't have you. And I you know, if I wasn't confident that I had accepted my role with MS and MS's role in my life, then I wouldn't have had another child. And it's not because I think I'm going to be Stretch Armstrong the rest of my life. So I just go on, and I think that is the healthy approach. Am I like in denial? Absolutely not. You know, but one thing I'm sure of is that it has not and will never defeat me.
Awesome. As we come to the close of this amazing series, I would like to end with a quote that I found on the National MS Society website that I think pretty much sums things up. Quote, "Wellness is a dynamic state of physical, emotional, spiritual, and social well-being that can be achieved even in the presence of a chronic illness or disability." Thank you, Clay, for being so generous with your time and being so open about us with how you live with your MS. And special thanks goes to Teva Neuroscience for their charitable contribution, which has made this special presentation of MS Learn Online possible.
Kate, you've been great. And I want to thank Dr. Kolb, too.
Thank you.
very
I'd like
much.
to thank Dr. Kolb as well.
And our audience.
And the audience. I'd like to thank for the expertise. Now, if you haven't seen the first two installments dealing with the physical and emotional health of MS, or if you'd like to see them again, just click on the titles to the right of the screen. Take care and make sure you join the movement to end MS. Visit nationalmssociety.org to learn how you can get involved. And now we'd like to close with one of Clay's biggest hits, a song he wrote which we think is particularly fitting when we're talking about living well with MS. Live Until I Die.
Everything around me are things I dearly love. And every night I get on my knees and thank the Lord above that I don't have to think about tomorrow. I don't need anything money can buy. I don't have to beg, steal, or borrow. I just want to live until I die. I don't have to beg, steal, or borrow.